A Silicon Valley Scandal. I'm Jason Horton.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
And this is Ghost Town.
If hundreds of dollars of pizza, threatening messages, packages of cockroaches, spiders, strippers, and swingers arrived at your doorstep, you might think these things are all part of a aggressive yet traumatizing high school prank, not the machinations of a Fortune 500 company. And yet, in 2019, these actions were sanctioned by high-ranking CEO and executives, a cadre of blonde 20-somethings, and a dumpy, power-hungry middle manager hell-bent on harassing a small mom-and-pop New England e-commerce site. I'm not kidding. Today on Ghost Town, eBay's bizarre, violent, and chaotic cockroach cult. It all started with Ina and David Steiner, a somewhat nerdy couple passionate about collectibles. Ina worked at a publishing company and collected books, and David was a video producer who loved perusing yard sales looking for deals. 4 years after eBay was founded, keep in mind this was 1999, and e-commerce, or at the time, quote, buying things off of the internet, was still not the norm, the two created a website offering down-to-earth advice to online buyers and sellers. They called it Auction Bites and later E-commerce Bites, which still exists today and whose reporting contributed greatly to the research of this episode. Ina was the writer and David the publisher. And as the 2000s rolled around, they got into a flow, with E-commerce Bites becoming a resource for those active on Etsy, Amazon, and more, specifically on sites where you are, auctioning items off via the internet. They shared trends, news, and insights into this world, and important people took notice. Now, while E-commerce Bites was still a pretty niche publication, by the mid-2010s it was read by anyone who was anyone in e-commerce, including the executives at eBay. In early 2019, the site broke the news that eBay had hired a new communications chief named Steve Weimer, who would report directly to eBay's CEO, Devin Wenig. It was no surprise that Devin Wenig had hired Steve Weimer, as they were both pretty much cut from the same cloth. The two were older, aggressive white men who historically thrived on navigating competitive, highly political institutions. Wenig in New York as a lawyer and executive at Thomson Reuters, and Weimer working communications for 3 different Republican senators on Capitol Hill. In April 2019, E-commerce Bites published a piece reporting on Wenig's salary, saying that his $18 million a year compensation was 152 times the average eBay employee's salary, and hinting that this wealth was made on the backs of thousands of independent eBay sellers. The couple running an e-commerce newsletter site out of their home had gotten under these executives' skins, and in a way this piece was the last straw. After the post was published, according to the New York Times, Weimer texted the link to Wenig, saying, quote, "We are going to crush this lady." Wenig hated E-commerce Bites and the Steiners as much as Weimer. Quote, "I want to see ashes," he said at one point, "whatever it takes." But the Steiners kept on doing their thing, likely ignorant of the discourse around them in the corner offices of eBay. On May 31st, 2019, E-commerce Bites wrote another piece about how eBay promised to give sellers greater protection from fraudulent buyers. In response, Wenig said, quote, "Take her down. Enter a new enemy of eBay, a Twitter account called Fidomaster." If there was one other entity Weimer and Wenig hated as much as E-commerce Bites, it was Fidomaster. Fidomaster's wife sold on eBay, and he was often openly critical of the site, thinking that it capitalized on both his wife and other dedicated sellers. He'd tweet all the time about his thoughts on the subject, and while each tweet got more than a dozen likes, according to the New York Times, eBay's global security and resiliency analysts, under the watchful eye of Weimer, kept a giant file on Fidomaster, certain he was in conspiracy to take the Fortune 500 company down. A man named James Bao ran the Global Security and Resiliency Department for Weimer, who then, of course, reported up to Wenig. Bao was a squat, middle-aged man with thinning hair who was just as extreme as Weimer and Wenig, with less of the American Psycho charm. He would often tell his employees, who were called Charlie's Angels and Jim's Angels on account of them all being in their early 20s, young, blonde, and with a concerningly high turnover rate, that he had worked for the CIA. According to the New York Times, once he found a knife on the barbecue grill on eBay's campus. A deranged person could have used it to hurt someone, he told his employees, and proceeded to stab the chair with it just to make a point. It was never removed, a kind of warning for those who dared cross. Bao was also obsessed with e-commerce Bytes and FidoMaster, and was convinced the two were actively in cahoots and conspiring against eBay. At one point, the New York Times reported that Bao believed that FidoMaster was actually the Steiners, under a secret pseudonym. 8 days after Wenig's Take Her Down text, the actual takedown began, first with a member of the security team flying across the country and arriving at the Steiners' quiet suburban home. Law documents state that the eBay employee scrawled the word FidoMaster on the couple's fence. And this weirdness was just the beginning. In mid-2019, FidoMaster, whose name would never be learned by eBay or me or the general public, thankfully, would also be targeted. At that point, FidoMaster received an unsolicited message from a new Twitter user calling herself Marissa Eddy. Eddy looked like an attractive young woman, 25, with long dark hair and a pouty smirk. Claiming to be a former eBay employee, she told FidoMaster that she had, quote, extremely damaging videos of executives misbehaving and wanted his help passing them to e-commerce Bytes. When FidoMaster pointed out that Ina Steiner's email address was public and very easy to find, the account suggested she could leave the videos on a thumb drive at, quote, a hotel in the city of your choice. FidoMaster thought this idea seemed excessive and weird, and finally he told the account that they should maybe get a lawyer. According to an ex-eBay employee in the Global Security and Resiliency Department, Marissa Eddy was actually one of Jim's angels, fishing for confirmation from FidoMaster that he was somehow linked to e-commerce Bytes. Though this could have taught the department that this measure was bizarre and paranoid, and that the connection between the two small, very small entities was untrue, instead, this lack of connection meant certain guilt to Bao, and he doubled down. Big time. More after this break.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Hello.
How are you doing?
How you doing out there?
We're checking in.
We are checking in.
And I want to say thank you for the people that have checked in with us.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
It feels good to get a check-in. It's very chaotic here, as you might imagine, and very heartbreaking.
You're aware of what's going on, or you live in California, or you are just aware. So I know you know what we're talking about. It's been an interesting time.
Actually, it feels very nice to be recording this right now. It's nice to have a little bit of normalcy and do this work because it really, it can be a nice thing.
And we appreciate you every week.
Absolutely.
But we appreciate everyone and everything, I think, more this week.
Mm-hmm.
Next week, we're back on schedule. We're just back to the bare minimum of everything. But this week is you know what we're saying?
A little special couple words because, we appreciate the care. And this is a community, too. Maybe we don't often throw around the word community, I
think because we're not on, and I wish we were more, we're not on Instagram, maybe, and social media is maybe a lot where community happening. We're just like, we like making podcast.
Yeah.
And we like talking about these things and we respond to everybody and stuff like that. But we're not great at having, an internet presence in that way. It's not because I'm too old.
No.
That's not true.
No, it's not because every picture of me is perfect.
Yeah, it's not. It's not those reasons.
Not that.
But we thanks for listening and stuff like that. Because I know everything affects everyone. You don't have to live here or whatever for that to happen. On that note, I don't have anything creative to say about the mighty government.
Nothing.
I'm going to take a week off of that.
Okay, you're just going to read their names.
I'm just going to read their names. I can do it in a
like fun accents or something.
Fun accents or a sultry way.
You guys want sultry, like a little
Here's what you're thinking.
Fun accent.
Every time you do it, it's sultry.
Oh,
what's different?
You're like, exactly.
What's new? It's always hot.
On every time.
Your voice is so alluring. It's not nasally.
More,
You have a punchable face and a punchable voice. We love it. I think I'm gonna read the names like we're in a. I'm gonna do it like we're in a classroom.
Oh,
and then
like a present.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And it's for you when you hear your name.
Raise your hand.
Yeah, or do nothing. Just live your life. Marissa Rothermel.
Hello. I'll keep saying hello.
You keep saying hello.
I like to greet.
Yeah.
I like that.
Matthew Clemens Leray.
Hello.
Casey Weber.
Hello.
Chris Hernandez.
Hello.
Kat Joselle.
Hello.
Kelly Meehan.
Hello.
Ashley Matson.
Hello.
Those are our mayors. And I'll tell you something, it's harder to, when I say their names just individually, I'm like, I feel like I'm saying it wrong.
Wind up.
Kelly Meehan.
Yeah.
That's the way
you get a real ramp up when you
work it into
integrate it into some kind of theme. But so now it's just bare bones.
And our governor
who
reached out and said, hey, if you ever need that private plane. And I said, we do need it. But it was just coincidentally that we needed it just to like cruise.
It was not,
but
it was just for yourself. Yeah.
It was for myself.
Yeah.
It was,
that's so nice.
A little something for me. And I will take that as, we'll take a rain check on it.
Oh yeah. We will definitely hit her up.
We will definitely, our paths will cross. They've almost crossed a couple of times, but, we're very thankful to have our governor, Avian Noble. Want no ads, no chit-chat, bonus episodes, just the good stuff. 7 days free. Head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/ghosttownpod. Or or better, donate to one of the many amazing fundraisers that are happening. Pasadena Animal Rescue, support the firefighters, the links and stuff, the mutual aids and Red Cross, and there's some wonderful GoFundMes.
So many good ones there. Yeah, and again, I'm sure there's a wealth of them. We'd be happy to respond if you want any inspiration or places that we like.
I do that. In fact, I asked Rebecca. I was like, "Hey, what's your?" Because you're really good at vetting things, I think, and not to say that but it's you just want to make sure, and we've gone and collected stuff and donated, and so many great places in Los Angeles have opened their doors. And I'll say one positive thing about this is that it's emotionally overwhelming to see how many businesses, and you'd think like, oh wow, you're kind of putting up or shutting up. You're putting up, I think, and it's really great to see that happen. I think that's been one positive reminder that that's how people really are. Yes, you got your negative detractors and find a reason to whatever, but you got a lot of positivity has come from it. Unfortunately, it takes something like this for that to happen.
And actually, I'll share something really quick before we get back into it too. There's this clothing company called Myrtle. They're LA-based, woman-owned, a woman who has a disability and who is very close to the Eaton fires. And I went over there just to like return something and like do something normal. But I also was like checking in, and it was still kind of a safe place to be. But she was giving clothes to the many, many people. And again, her clothes are handmade. They take a lot of work for her to make, and they're crafted with love. And she was just giving them away to whomever, was in need of her community. And I was just like very moved by it. And if you want to support her, it's Myrtle. Her clothes are amazing, beautifully crafted, really original pieces that she makes herself and sources from other places like that. So wanted to shout out to her. And yeah, just the community that I've seen over the past week. God, it's only been a week.
2025 has been 4 years.
Yeah, it really has. All right.
Well, let's get back into it.
Yeah. On August 1st, 2019, E-Commerce Bytes reported on a lawsuit eBay had filed against Amazon, part of their normal and noteworthy e-commerce news commentary and rotation. Though the piece was just a few brief paragraphs, Wenning was irate. According to the New York Times, 33 minutes after the E-Commerce Bytes article went up, he texted Weimer, quote, "If you are ever going to take her down, now is the time." On it, Weimer responded. He then texted his underling Bao, quote, "Hatred is a sin," wrote Weimer. "I am very sinful." Bao said he was ready to escalate, to which Weimer responded, "Amen. I want her done. She is a biased troll who needs to get burned down." Wenning then reached out to Weimer again about the matter, saying he was going on a sabbatical in August, and by the time he was back, he wanted the E-Commerce Bytes / Phytomaster problem taken care of. Weimer would later respond, quote, "I genuinely believe these people are acting out of malice, and anything we can do to solve it must be explored, whatever it takes." In preparation for their executive-sanctioned harassment, Bao got real, like movie montage real. He showed his analysts a clip from the 1988 teen comedy Johnny Be Good, in which a villainous football coach deals with the simultaneous chaos of multiple pranks, including a delivery guy with hundreds of dollars of unwanted pizza, singing, dancing Hare Krishnas, a rodent exterminator, a male stripper. Bao then had his analysts brainstorm stuff that they could do to the Steiners, a la that clip. Together, the team devised a plan called the White Knight Strategy. The White Knight Strategy was, quite honestly, a convoluted and pretty half-baked mission to secretly harass the Steiners. And then they would be so harassed that eBay itself would graciously offer assistance to stop the attacks. According to the New York Times, quote, winning the Steiners' confidence and manipulating them into favorable coverage of eBay. On August 7th, a member of Jimmy's Angels initiated the plan by sending Twitter messages to Ina Steiner's Twitter via a fake persona, a Samoan eBay user called Tui Eli. I hope I'm saying that right, but it is fake. The account began communicating to her that e-commerce bites had harmed his sales. Steiner ignored the messages, even as the tone escalated. Tui Eli wrote, quote, I guess I'm going to have to get your attention another way, bitch. On August 10th, the analyst behind the fake Twitter account made good on their threats. That afternoon, around 4 p.m., a series of disturbing deliveries began, culminating in a package containing a bloody pig mask. 14 minutes after the mask was delivered, Tui Eli wrote, Do I have your attention now? The Steiners also received a voicemail for following up on a fabricated inquiry to open an Adam and Eve sex toy franchise. Then, a book titled Grief Diaries, Surviving the Loss of a Spouse and a Funeral Wreath happened upon their doorstep. The Steiners then received a box of cockroaches, fly larvae, and live spiders. Not only that, copies of the September issue of Hustler Barely Legal were delivered to the homes of the neighbors, with David Steiner's name on them. To this, Tui Eli followed up with, quote, When you hurt our business, you hurt our families. People will do anything to protect family. After the Twitter attack and the bizarre deliveries, Phase 3 of the White Knight Strategy began, a physical presence at the Steiners' home. On August 15th, Bao and one of his angels flew first class, checked into the Ritz-Carlton, and drove to the Steiners' home in a rental. Their mission was to install a GPS device on the couple's Toyota, but they soon discovered that the car was locked in the garage. Though they went to get supplies, Bao never did successfully break into the Steiners' garage. Of course, during all of this, the Steiners themselves were terrified. It was psychologically devastating, their attorney would later say. After calling the local police, they hoped law enforcement would take their concerns seriously. Bao and his employee began following the Steiners' car as it drove the streets of Boston. They tapped into an internet feed of the police radio. Eventually, via this radio, they'd overheard that they had been spotted and stopped following the Steiners, opting to send them more pizza. At 4:30 a.m., a 24-hour pizzeria delivered $70 worth of food to the couple. Then, more pizza. Then, Craigslist ads with the Steiners' address popped up for estate sales and swingers parties. The eBay team made another attempt at surveillance on August 18th, but David Steiner managed to take a photograph of the car, submitting it to the police. Meanwhile, the local police had already figured out that a payment had been made on some of the pizzas with a gift card bought in Silicon Valley, just a few miles from eBay headquarters, and the license plate on one of the rental cars was traced back to one of Jimmy's Angels. At that point, the police also got the FBI involved, as well as eBay's lawyers, who began their own investigation. This was perhaps the fourth step of the White Knight strategy, covering their very obvious tracks in very idiotic ways. To explain away why a gift card in Silicon Valley was used in a Boston suburb and a random Twitter harasser was laying into the Steiners at the same time, they found a couple fall men from their vast and unsubstantiated, quote, person of interest files, pretty much a dossier on anybody who'd ever made a threat against the company, and sent over the names from anyone who lived even vaguely in the Boston area. Clearly, Bao was scrambling, and the local PD, FBI, and eBay's own lawyers could smell it. On August 25th, looking for some high-level support, Bao wrote Weimer that his team had done an op on their friend in Boston. Quote, if there's any way to get some top cover, that would be great, he said, according to the New York Times. Bao instructed his team to erase the data from their phone and lie about who is in Boston and when. By the end of the month, eBay lawyers knew the source of the harassment was coming from the Global Security and Resiliency Department, firing almost everyone without severance and putting Bao on administrative leave. Weimer was also fired, and Wenig resigned at the very end of August with a cool exit package of $57 million, according to the New York Times. In June 2020, the FBI completed its investigation and the eBay charges became public. At that point, Wenig decided to make his own statement, saying that he had done nothing wrong. Quote, "There was no direction, no knowledge, no private understanding, no tacit approval ever," he said. "I was just speaking off the cuff." In a separate statement, Weimer said he would, quote, "never condone or participate in any of the activities directed against the Steiners." At this point, Wenig was elected to the board of General Motors. Mary Barra, GM's chief executive, called the cyberstalking scandal, quote, "regrettable," but noted that it, quote, "didn't involve any GM business." Weimer became chief executive of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Silicon Valley. The chair of the board said the nonprofit was, quote, "aware of what happened," but believes Weimer is a, quote, "leader with integrity," and was apparently the unanimous choice for the position. On a better note, the Steiners kept uncovering e-commerce news on ecommercebytes.com, and they still do today, which is a success story in and of itself for small media, though they are still, in many ways, I'm sure, recovering from the trauma inflicted on them. In June 2020, the U.S. Attorney's Office did hold some accountability for what happened to the Steiners, charging 7 former eBay employees, Jim's Angels, and contractors with conspiracy to commit cyberstalking and conspiracy to tamper with witnesses, including James Bao, eBay's senior director of safety and security, and 6, of course, of his angels. Bao pleaded guilty in April 2022, and in September of 2022, he was sentenced to 57 months in prison. On January 11th, 2024, eBay agreed to pay a $3 million fine as part of a deferred prosecution. And then there was the civil suit. In July 2021, Ina and David Steiner filed suit against eBay Incorporated, former CEO Devin Wenig, former Chief Communications Officer Steve Weimer, the defendants in the criminal case, and more, saying that Wenig and Weimer, quote, "provided the other defendants with carte blanche authority to terminate the reporting of the Steiners by whatever means necessary, with defendant Weimer expressing, quote, 'I want to see ashes as long as it takes, whatever it takes.'" And, more of the text that I have mentioned before. The lawsuit further claims that, quote, "all of the horrific, vicious, and sickening conduct that followed was committed by employees of eBay and PFC while acting in the scope of their employment under the authority of and for the benefit of eBay." The civil trial is scheduled to begin on March 3rd, 2025, where hopefully more justice will be served.